And in this culture, as men, we're irreplaceable at work. That's how we think about it. But the reality of things is that if you quit your job tomorrow, they'll have 40 CVs for your job in 2 weeks. But if you quit your home today, your partner, your kids, you're irreplaceable there. We're irreplaceable at home, not at work.
Well, I'm so excited to be joined today by Sebastián Molano. He has 20 years of experience in the international sector and leads a platform called Defying Gender Roles, which is a space for communication, conversation about manhood, fatherhood, gender. And I just so admire the work that you have done in this space, engaging with other men, especially as it relates to men and masculinities. So, Sebastián, welcome to the Masking Tapes. I'm so excited to have you.
Gracias, Carolina. Thank you. Thank you for opening your space for this conversation. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Of course. Well, we're recording this episode specifically. I'm hoping to release it on Father's Day to talk about what it's like to be a man, what it's like to be a father in this world right now. And I want to start off this podcast with a question I ask at the beginning of every one of my episodes, which is, what is one of the hardest parts about being a man? What is also one of the most challenging parts about being a father in this world right now?
The willingness that people around me, even those who love me, encourage me to use dominance and justify the exercise of violence as something valid. It's really scary. And to think that I am turning 43 in September and I'm still deconstructing those pieces inside me is pretty deep. Those are roots that go very deep into your own upbringing and growing up as a person. So yeah, that's been one of the hardest elements of being socialized and growing up as a man.
Wow. And what is one of the hardest parts about being a father now?
So I think about fatherhood as a reflection of your masculinity. You can be a father who embodies a lot of ideas about what it means to father and be a protector, a provider that are very linked with who you are as a person and how you conceive yourself as a man. Sometimes we don't see that. Something that has been very clear to me is that there is a secret language inside me that fatherhood is allowing me to start making visible. Because there are elements of who I am that were given to me when I wasn't very aware of what's going on, but that shape my reaction, my interaction, and the way in which I understand the world, what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable or not. And with children, they're just mirrors. They trigger you all the time, but it's not them. It's the reflection of a behavior that puts you back into an experience in your life that kind of brings that up. So I do feel like fatherhood has been for me a road inward, but also an ongoing journey of imperfection.
Okay.
There's nothing more grueling to know that you're engaging daily basis on something you're going to get wrong.
Wow.
Wrong all the
humbling.
time. Wrong. Yes. And I sometimes surprise myself. I'm like, how was I able to manage this situation? What was inside me that helped me be the parent I want to be for my children or the parent I want to have when I was younger? And there are moments in which I was like, whoa, that was my dad's voice on me. That was my aunt's reaction. Where did that come from? I thought I was over that. So it's a conversation between what kind of man are you, what kind of masculinity you're nurturing yourself, and then how that's reflected into your parenting.
So you're finding these pieces that are kind of buried sometimes into yourself, kind of reflected in the fatherhood that you then transmit in the same way. Is that right?
Yes. So when I think about masculinity, manhood, being a father, sometimes you think about components of your life as a layer cake. This is marble cake. It's all mixed. And sometimes it is very hard to pinpoint, like, where is the root of this situation that I'm facing, or how I'm reacting to it, or why am I capable of caring or not crying or asking for help. So it's pretty mixed. And I think that it takes a lot of reflexivity and intention to start digging. If that's the path you choose. Many people choose the path of like, well, it is what it is. I'm here, buckle up and move forward. But I don't think that pays off well in this world. We're seeing it, we're living through it, and it's horrible.
So what do you think the biggest influences of who you are as a father now are? Who kind of shaped the way you practice or give care.
It's interesting. I was thinking this morning about role models in terms of people you look up to, right? Who are the versions of men that I would like to be through the positive side of upholding human rights and pushing for gender equality and LGBTQI rights, and those who are against all of that. And the ones that are again, you have them everywhere. You see them everywhere. They have big platforms, but on the flip side, men who are doing this kind of work in that pro-feminist way, in that human rights way, are not the men who want the spotlight on them. The other men, what they're doing is like, me, look at me, this is how it should be, how do you dominate? And it's like, no, this is why. But for me personally, I always go to the women in my life, my grandma, my aunts, my mom, but also aside of my dad, my uncles, where I had a village that supported me and nurtured me in different ways. So I try to make a quilt of it. I want to engage with my children like my aunt engaged with me, because he was curious and he was loving. And also understanding that with all the positive things that I want to bring, there are things that I did not experience under a positive light. How do I change them? How do I acknowledge them? I also say, well, they did what they could with what they have. Would I have done the same? Would I have done it differently? So it's that kind of combination. I feel like growing up in a country in war and then having the chance to live in places around the world, of meeting different people, speaking different languages, what it does is that it gives you the possibility to reassess people's experiences in a way that is much more empathetic, yet it allows you also to hold others accountable and be like, you could have done differently.
Yeah.
And I flip it, and I hope that when my children are older, they're going to look back and be like, but who was this person who raised me when I was 6 or 7 or 8 and he was 45, 46, and what was he going through? Like, I think that there is a conversation that is so needed that sometimes there is a space for that and sometimes there isn't.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful framing of it, and that curiosity that's needed to kind of explore when we don't have all the answers. What shaped our parents or our grandparents, those lineages of fathers going back. And I also love the idea that what you're doing is making feminist the spaces you occupy, not occupying other spaces and kind of putting yourself on this pedestal of like, I am the idealized positive masculine influence in this world, instead of being like, okay, like, how do I look inwards to the spaces I'm already in? And I think that is so important. But I want to go back to your family a little bit. How have you seen fatherhood change intergenerationally within your family?
Out of my family, I'm the only man who have children of my generation. And then on my dad's side, there's 6 men. So I have witnessed what parenting looks like for them, coming from the same household, different ages, different life experiences. I do feel like there are some parts of society that have enabled us as men to start raising our hands and being like more outspoken about the kind of help we need, but it's still rare. In my household with my uncles and my dad, something that it was always very clear to me is that showing affection wasn't wrong. It was actually encouraged. But in the culture in Colombia and in other places where I've lived, I've seen that the expression of feelings is very linked to the consumption of alcohol. And this is something that always has kind of fascinated me in understanding, because it means that you have to intoxicate your body to detoxicate yourself. And the next day you feel super hungover and like physically bad. But then it's like there is this levity that comes from your ability to express your feelings, which I think it's really sad and painful that for men we have to do that. But in different cultures, it works in different ways. We all play soccer and we have a big love for the sport, but also was a way of bonding, right? That has in some ways allowed me to nurture this side of me that from very early on was very clear to me that I was a very sensitive person. Yeah. And that I got very fearful with violence and things like that were really hard when I was younger because I couldn't quite articulate. But now with the benefit of time, I can see the connections.
Wow. Is there any moment or story that makes you think about what does loving fatherhood look like?
So the first thing is like the physical element of it. It's like I always say hi to my dad or my uncles and we kiss on the cheek. And in Colombia, that's not very common, but we're very affectionate with each other. So the body, the physical closeness with them is very special. I remember the first time I played soccer with them. when I was like 14, and they were older and playing on the same team and like being like one of the guys, one of the
Yeah.
men, I don't know. And then going in Colombia is very common that after the games you go and have some beers and chat, and there is a space of like almost therapy, kind of like where
Yeah.
you share what's going on. Being young, like I wouldn't drink, or sometimes I would go, and then when I was in the age of drinking, I would choose to drive. So I'll be the responsible driver, and others.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like me parenting my dad, and I was taking care of them.
Yeah.
But just those spaces that where I could see the sides of them that I couldn't see in other places, where they will basically make jokes, and like my family is making jokes all the time. So they will kind of mask some of what was going on there, but then there were spaces where they were actually talking to each other and being real about each other and having conversations that sometimes is hard to have,
Yeah.
and being from an early age welcoming that club and
Yeah.
seeing what it was like, but also excluded from the other one. Like I was never allowed in the kitchen anywhere. Anywhere. So I was 23 and I went to live in a place different from Colombia, and I was useless. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to clean. I didn't know how to take care of myself, because I was
Wow.
like, oh no, you're a man. Go sit and we'll serve you. So it's weird. It's weird, but with my dad and my uncles, that was kind of like the experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful to have that positive space to gather, and at the same time, it's after doing different activities that are much more masculine around playing sports or drinking beers that you're able to have more of the permission structure to be vulnerable with each other, or to have those kinds of kinship and conversation in that way. And I think that point you made earlier of intoxicating your body to detoxicate yourself is also super, super important. And what I saw, especially when I was in college, I remember speaking to one young man, and I'd asked him what one of the hardest things about being a man was. And he said, well, I feel like I need to get high to be able to tell my guys like how I'm actually feeling. If he said something weird, or if he crossed a line when he was being vulnerable, the next day he could be like, oh, blame it on the substance, rather than, oh, I actually like really needed to get something off my chest and I didn't know how to do it. And so I think it's so interesting that where alcohol or different substances fit into your ability to express yourself and be vulnerable with one another, but also how you were able to, join that kind of club in a way with the men in your family. As you've gotten older, have you been able to enter some of those other spaces like the kitchen, or?
I have, but the thing has been that, so I've been living outside Colombia for about 20 years. So I'm at a point in my life where I go there and I don't feel that I belong there. I come back to the US and I don't belong here either. So it's just my home is inside me, and I carry it like the snails. What I've realized is that as I've grown older and as my children have grown older, I have found more confidence in being who I want to be, who I really want to be.
Yeah.
So I'm less scared of asking for what I need or what I want. And sometimes that means, the last time I went to Colombia, saying, I don't want to go anywhere. Can we sit in the kitchen and make a meal and chat? That's enough. Is that enough for you? Absolutely. Okay, yeah. So let's do it. Is seeing each other enough? I had a friend that I love, and I haven't seen him physically. I saw him last year in Colombia, but last time I saw him was 7 years prior to that.
Wow.
And we've been friends for about 20 years. I was in Colombia. It was the last day we hadn't had the chance to see each other. And he drove across the city, a work day, just to come and say hi for 5 minutes. And he left, right? And it's like showing up.
How did you get into working on gender issues, going from this upbringing and a family that doesn't really talk about gender issues explicitly? How did your personal life kind of bring you into this work?
So for me, one of the things that I've always been fascinated about is power. Who has power, why they have power, who's giving them power, how they exercise that power. I was working in the Dominican Republic and the Dominican Republic-Haiti border. And in that work, I was already doing gender work without knowing. I had the chance to come to the US and do a master's degree. And I started taking a class on gender justice. It all started clicking there to understand gender inequality as a power imbalance that is so pervasive that prevents, especially women, to exercise their basic rights. It clicked. It absolutely changed the way in which I was playing with ideas in my head and trying and not being able to put them together. And then I had the fortune to read a book called Dying to Be Men written by Gary Barker. And Gary Barker now is somebody very well known. And understanding that my experience of growing up country in conflict, in war, and trying to become a man wasn't unique. The level of violence that was normalized in my upbringing wasn't something that was only about me. That the level of exclusion based on class that I experienced, not from the oppressed side, but more from the privileged side of things, and understanding those dynamics wasn't only to me. It happens to others, and it adds up to building and sustaining this system called patriarchy. It took me a lot of time to get to this level of understanding, but I started working on women's political participation, how to get more women into politics across Latin America and the Caribbean. And then I started understanding the barriers from that standpoint. So simple yet crucial, critical things like, well, if the party is holding the meetings at night, how do you bring more women when women usually are doing the care activities at home? How do you do this on a Saturday when there's no daycare? So starting to see the systemic elements that shape the experiences and opportunities of people and how they keep them away from accessing the power. There were very interesting conversations 10, 12 years ago about a specific experiences that were related with that power inequality, but they were separated. Again, the layer cake vis-a-vis the marble cake. We were here back then in 2012 about catcalling, sexual and reproductive rights issues, economic disparities based on gender, the gender gap. But those things were not being put together as a continuum in the experience of life. And I didn't see men talking about this or making this visible. So I said, well, let me trying to bring an idea about this together. And that's how Defying Gender Roles was born in 2014, 2015. With the idea of being an initiative for social change where we defy openly outdated, harmful gender roles and norms, but with a focus on rethinking masculinity. And the question is, what does it mean to be a man today? I was pondering with that question 12 years ago. And now it seems like, of course, that was the question. Like, no, it wasn't that clear, but now it feels so relevant and important. And it's so good that we're here. That was kind of like the connection, but it started generally from trying to be like, we need a voice. I'm a perfect voice, but why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, really fascinating of where conflict played a role in your identity as a man growing up. What does manhood look like when there is violent conflict around you? And I think so often the narrative is like, oh, it's just a one-track path towards aggression and violence and whatever it may be. And your model of this is like rethinking of what can it look like rather than like what does society prescribe us to think that this looks like? How do you think you were able, especially growing up and becoming a man in a time of so much violence around you, but how were you able to kind of take the different path and model a different way forward to be a man?
I think it has been a journey of trying to tap into my nature as a person, sometimes in very painful ways. Sometimes like making the decision of leaving Colombia was a decision of like, I need to get out of here because I can't live like this anymore. I can't be this person. I can't be here. I can't do what I want to do. So having to leave the place and the people you love the most because you have to think about yourself first has been that intuition. Like, how do I connect with the person that I am? It's a little odd to explain, but at the same time, each of us can relate to moments where you tap to that kid you were, that young person you were that had certain dreams, certain ideas, like an endless backpack of the ideas of others, the expectations of others, the ideas of success. And then there is a moment in which you can't carry that backpack anymore. No. And you ditch the backpack or the backpack will drag you down. And at the same time, especially doing this work, Carolina, and this is something I think constantly, how do you keep yourself accountable and real into the political work that it takes to defy patriarchy without believing that I am the solution, that this is the solution, or that it is about me. It's about the work. So it is a constant conversation on that, on like, how do you get yourself to be part of a collective of people who are working on this and create a space for yourself, but also for others, without thinking that you have the revealed truth. So I feel like that's when the collective element saves you from yourself. Of saying like, how do we do this together? If I can go back to something you asked, growing up in conflict, I do think that there is something very powerful about those of us who have experienced the normalization of violence. When we leave those contexts and we see that there are different ways of being and existing, when you understand that a lot of those conditions are being kept for people who benefit from them, and then you realize that you don't have to go that way, they don't have to be that way. But at the same, it's kind of that notion of power, of patriarchal understanding of the world, of telling people what's right and wrong, and then putting in people's bodies and lives like they don't matter.
Yeah. Wow. It's like the idea of a fish being in water and not knowing that it's wet, that once you're out of that context, being able to recognize and then understanding who is gaining profit and power off of the pain of other people, especially in the global South. And even in this country, I mean, we're seeing the pain and the violence and who is benefiting from that. And I think that is something that we all need to constantly be interrogating within ourselves. And also, how are we benefiting, living comfortable lives right here, right now in the US? And who is feeling our pain because of where our tax dollars are going to work right now? I'd like to shift this conversation back a little bit to the fatherhood context. We talked about how violence has in part shaped the masculinity and the way you walk through this world. But I'd love to talk about how becoming a father impacted the way that you walk through this world, and how has taking part in care work shaped you?
So since I was very little, I knew I wanted to be a dad. So I felt like it was something like I wanted to do, like care for somebody else. Then as I grew up, then there was a period of time I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a dad. This is a big responsibility and this world's scary. So when my first kid was born, I was 35. I would say that parenting has been one of the most rewarding, magical, mundane, yet grueling, challenging, triggering experiences I've had in my life. I have relied heavily on feminist scholars to understand better what it means to father. I read a lot of bell hooks before having my first child, and I also benefit a lot from, there's an organization here in the Boston area called Parenting Journey. They do a training for new fathers or for fathers who need support in their journey as parents. And I did it before having my child. And it was a wonderful experience just to be able to start preparing the land for the garden you want to grow. That is your kids. Connecting a lot with ideas and thoughts from feminists and people who have done this work. And then working on myself. The first time I became a parent, it was pretty much in that way, but also a lot of like, do we have a stroller? Do we need diapers? Where are the wipes? Do we have a crib? A lot of the logistics of it and the radical change of your life. That was something that I thought I was prepared for, but I wasn't. It took me a while to kind of start syncing my life with the life of what it means to care. I thought I could do it all, and it was very clear very soon that I couldn't. And it was taking a toll on my body, on my mental health. But it's that idea of translating the expectation of perfection from the workplace to the home. And that's a recipe for failure. If you're a father engaging on this and you're like, I'm so good at work and I do this and you're trying to bring that at home, it's going to be very easy to fall into the trap that it is about your performance and it's not about the collective effort that takes to do things in a household, because usually you do it hopefully with others. Yeah. So it's a communal endeavor, but also we have put in our heads as men, as fathers, that we are the ones who have answers, who need to protect, who need to provide, to sort out situations. I mean, we do in some ways, but in others it's just we're learning and it's a new thing. So giving yourself grace for not knowing, but also knowing that you have to get better soon and faster because life demands that from you.
We have to take driver's tests to become a driver. We have to do all these different courses to do other things in life, but parenthood courses are not a mandatory thing before becoming a parent. And so how did you have the impetus and the humility to recognize that fatherhood courses might be something that's very beneficial to who you are as a father? And then also in that same era of striving to be a better dad, how did you come to terms with the times that you would mess up as a father?
On the first part of the question, I think it came from a recognition of knowing that even though I have a dad and I love my dad and we have a very close relationship, we never lived together because my parents were divorced. So I didn't know what it was like to grow up with a dad. So how do you do this? How do you go about this? And in that program that I did, many of them had experiences of violence. Some of them were previously incarcerated. Some of them were doing the course as a prerequisite to see the children again. What I realized in doing that training was that their experiences of patriarchy and mine were very similar. We just took different decisions at critical moments. It humbled me so much because it was like doing this thing called life is hard, doing it without the tools to navigate it is harder, but also it's like I was allowed to make many mistakes, many mistakes in life that many people didn't have, that they couldn't afford that privilege of mistakes. So for me it was that, but also the sense of like, I want to be the best that I can. And I don't know how to do that. That was one piece. And the other piece is I've learned the hard way in terms of how do I give myself grace. I'm really good at giving grace to others, but I demand a lot from myself. I'm going to get those dishes. You're not going to see it. They're going to be clean. I'm going to fold those clothes in 3 pieces like everybody likes them. And I'm going to have fresh fruit. And then it's like, I needed to stretch. My neck is killing me. I need 5 minutes. I woke up at 5 in the morning. It's 11:30. Didn't you have 5 minutes for you? And it's like, no, I'll do it tomorrow. And it's like, no. I've started to learn that caring for myself is a prerequisite for caring for others. But also it's like, I deserve to take care of myself.
Yeah.
I don't need permission for anybody to raise my hand and say I need to take a day off of work. Well, my boss, if she lets me do it, I'll do it. But it's like those kind of things, right? Caring for others is not a reflection of my capacity to provide. Caring for others is the privilege to share my life with them and then to be able to say, when you have needs, tell me. But when I have needs, I'll have to tell you. But they can't address my needs if I don't have the capacity to say what I need. For men, that's hard. Men plus fatherhood is very hard because you're like, no, what I need is to work, strive, bring money. And sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes what you need to do is to say, I need 15 minutes and a break. I'm going to go around the block. Or for me, it has been try and error, but it hasn't come naturally. There is a beautiful book that I would recommend every single man to read it, but especially fathers. And I think it's called Mothering as a Social Construct by Angela Garvis. I read that book during my second parental leave. And it gave me so much strength, and I found so much power in her words, her experiences, and understanding the role of mothering, but also the role of fathering, in the role of parenting. So I gained a lot of insight from that, and I would recommend that book for anybody.
I feel like I want to read that now, and I'll put it in the episode notes, and I'll give it to every new father that I know in my life. And you mentioned right there a crucial point, which is your paternity leave. How did you get that, and what role did that have in your expression as a father, being able to be there for those early moments? Just a generation ago, like my dad did not have any paternity leave. And then my brother-in-law right now had 6 months of paternity leave. So I've seen the massive shift in care work that's able to be kind of normalized when men are given the opportunity to practice that care early on in their child's life. But I would love to know how it showed up in your life.
So here's the thing with paternity leave and parental leave policies. Caring for others, including yourself, is a fundamental right. In countries like the US, that right is a privilege. It's a perk of a job. That is wrong, morally, business-wise, soul-wise, however you want to see it. That doesn't work. In the case of women, the way in which motherhood and birthing is seen as a disability, it denies the complexities of the experience of pregnancy and delivering and all that comes with that. If you look at that through, a racial lens, you'll see the outstanding rates of Black women mortality rates in the US. This is the intersection of your experience, your culture, and the policies. And in this culture, the role of a man is to work and bring money. You don't have to be at home caring. That's why you bring money to the household. That's your place in the world. As men, we're irreplaceable at work. That's how we think about it. But the reality of things is that if you quit your job tomorrow, they'll have 40 CVs for your job in 2 weeks. But if you quit your home today, you're irreplaceable there. So men, we have to switch the understanding of this. We're irreplaceable at home, not at work. So the workplace becomes the space where we can push for these policies. In my case, in the organization that I work for, they had a policy of 25 days fully paid for new parents. And when I had my first child, that was like glorious. In this country, in the US, having 5 weeks fully paid.
That's amazing.
Many men don't enjoy it, don't even sick days, right? I was in a meeting with different folks doing gender work, and I said, I'm going to go on parental leave. And they say, oh, me too. Oh my God, we're all having children like 6 months. And it's like, what are you doing with your parental leave? One of them say, well, I have 10 days pay. And the other one say, I have 2. And I was like, wait, what? But we work for the same organization and we have different parental leave policies. And that created in me drive to do something to change that. So I started working with other people across the globe to try to push the organization to have uniform parental leave policies that are in line with the ILO, with the research, 26 weeks for burden parents at least, up to 26 weeks for not burden parents, thinking about the flexibility going back. All of these things is all very well documented. If you want to know more about this, check out Men Care. And within the US-based part of my organization, we work with the union and we actually got to a place where everybody agreed that we need to change our policy from 26 days to 12 weeks fully paid. Wow. And this is the policy that my colleagues enjoy today. I remember being at the office at that point when that was approved, and I cried because I felt like people didn't know how much they're going to value this. And then I ended up having the benefit of taking my second parental leave under this policy. And then in Massachusetts also create a financing system to collect taxes for a period of time and then allowing people to have paid parental leave. So all in all, I had 6 months of paid parental leave for my second child. And that meant a significant improvement in my in my partner well-being, in my children well-being, in my own well-being, in our ability to be together, get to know each other, go to the health checkups, deal with all the issues that come with pregnancy deliveries. So it is a significant transformation in the experience of people's lives as we want men to step up on the care work and do their fair share of work at home. This is paid training, but you do it, right? It's like there are people that take it and not in a serious way, but this is once in a lifetime. You have it and it changes you. Something that I want to mention that I think is very important, Carolina, and it has to do with the parental leaves, but it's something that men do not talk about. Go to your workplace, look at the HR policies, and look for loss and termination policies. 1 in 3 pregnancies in the US end up in a miscarriage. Those processes happen in different ways. It affects women's bodies in different ways, or people carrying a pregnancy in different ways. And workplaces need to understand that they need to have policies for that. Paid time that is exclusively for that they don't have to be justifying it, that we're adults and we can trust that, because in many places it doesn't exist. Wow. And if your HR people are like, well, we don't want to have a new policy, you ask about the bereavement policy and you can extend that. So just to say, sometimes as a man, oh, it's me, look at me, super father, superman, I'm so progressive, yada, yada. No, it's look at the things that where you can make a meaningful contribution that are not about you, but are enabling conditions for others to be able to carry on their lives in a way that is sustainable and caring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such an important point to bring up around miscarriages. And I hope that anyone listening to this podcast goes and looks at those policies and thinks about what ways they can show up in the workplace.
There is an organization called Parently, and Parently has a lot of information about how to go about and making changes in those policies. I did want to make sure that I give them a shout out because I've seen that they have done a lot of work. So check them out because there might be something already in your sector. There might be some resources there for you.
That's amazing. I'll add that to the show notes as well. As a father of 2 boys, what do you hope your sons learn from you, and what have you learned from your sons?
I hope they can look back into time and look at me and say, you learn. That's good. That's good. I like that they could look back and be like, yeah, when I was 7, you were like this, but then when I was 10, you were different. And I hope that they can see progression. They can see that I am trying to be a better person and therefore a better man and therefore for a better father, and to be able to be the parent they need, not the parent I wish I had or that I want to be, because those things sometimes they clash with each other and it's really easy to say like, well, it's my way or the highway. I hope that they do that, and they give me the benefit of the doubt. I hope they have enough curiosity to come and say like, so how do you do that? Why do you do that way? For me, always it has been important to have answers, not just to say like, sorry, I don't look back. It was what it was. It is what it is. Move on. No. The therapy I'm doing now is to avoid them the therapy.
You're saving them the therapy bills later by doing the therapy now. I love that.
So that was my 40-second gift for my birthday. Myself was like, I want to start therapy, and I've been doing it. It's something I recommend, especially to men that don't like to talk about what's going on with them. What I learned from them is We have a society where we think that we made it on our own, that we're the GOAT, the special one. And it's like, there's so many shoulders and hands and necks and backs that have provided you everything you need to be who you are in this moment. And it's so ungrateful and so unfair to think that you made it on your own. So I hope my children, when they look around, they don't look around like, how I'm the best in doing this. It's like, how can I do this best with others? And that taking care of themselves and others and the world is what makes life. It's not
love
about
that.
just thinking that. It's all about you and what you achieve, and what people see on you is what you do with others. You know, you can contribute to something and then feel that contributing is enough. That's the only way in which you can actually debunk this idea that vulnerability is weakness. Because it's not. If you're not vulnerable, you're not able to move on in life. You're not able to create links with others that are strong enough to withstand what life brings. But also you keep believing that it's all about you. You're the one that has the answers. And that's very dangerous. Dangerous.
It's very dangerous. So I like to close every episode of this podcast with one question. The question is, what do you love about being a man? But I'd also love to ask, what do you love about being a father?
I think I love less and less things about being a man. And I try to see that less as an identity of, it's like, I'm a man, no, I'm a person, I'm a parent. So I'm working on that. The only thing that I know that I benefit from being a man, and I feel it and I know it, is that I've been able to travel to so many places. I've always felt safe in places where I know that for female bodies or for queer bodies, it would have been absolutely no go, very difficult, very challenging. So it pains me, and at the same time, I have had the experiences of life I've had because of that.
Yeah.
And what I love about being a father is the depth of the experience, of the love, of the pain, of the tears, of the memories, of the moments, and being like, we're doing this. I don't know. Sometimes like, I don't know how we're doing it, but we're doing it. And also seeing them grow and push me to be better, to be a better version of myself. I love that about my kids. I've been working with my partner to create this garden where we nurture these children, but we don't know what flowers are they going to give, if any. We don't know how they're going to grow, and we don't know if it's going to be in this spring or the next one. But just keep nurturing with the hope that you are creating a nurturing environment for this. So seeing them, especially the oldest one, who's already moving into the domains of asking big questions about life, seeing him bloom. And start asking questions and be like, is it my role to chop these branches, or is it my job to adapt the garden to let them grow? Starting that conversation with them. Can't wait for them to be older, because I have books I want to show them. I have records I want to play with them. There are places I want to go with them. And then there's not a single time that I don't look at pictures from when they were littler and I don't cry and I feel like it's gone. It's gone.
Oh, that's so precious. If you want to say a little bit more about that, I would love to hear what fatherhood as a garden looks like.
Sometimes it's a romanticized version, right? Because you think about the garden and you think about the wild bees universe of like having these flowers blooming and different, they all share with each other. But before getting to a point like that, what you have to do is get on your knees and start digging. Digging and digging. And it's so painful. So it's a hard process. Sometimes you have to know when to stop. Sometimes you're like, I can't do this. I need to call somebody else to help me. And then you call your parents and be like, can we talk about a relationship? You go to therapy and be like, can I talk about how I'm feeling about this? You talk to your other men friends, so you don't put everything on the women in your life and be like, please be my partner and my psychologist. And my mom is like, no. And then you're like, okay, maybe this thing that I thought it was a weed, it's actually a nice flower. I want to keep that one. I love there's a phrase from Lao Tzu that says that nature does not rush, yet everything gets accomplished.
Wow.
And I feel like for my sense of masculinity and what I want to see in the world, I saw a lot of landscaping, especially men saying the right words, showing the kind of right attitude, but it's landscape because it doesn't withstand the passage of time.
I love that. And this garden that you're growing, Sebastián, is a life's work for sure. And beyond that, not only your family gets to feel the fruits of this garden and the labor of it, but that you're able to share with your community, with your workplace. I'm so grateful for the model that you set in this world of what fatherhood, what manhood, what personhood, humanity looks like. Thank you so much.
just happy I can contribute to this conversation, and I'm excited to see where people can take some of these ideas and run with them.
I will be sending this episode to every father on Father's Day that I know. So thank you, Sebastián. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Masking Tapes. I am so grateful for the outpour of support for this podcast from strangers and loved ones alike, and for people who reach out across the globe about the impact that this podcast has had on them. I really appreciate the support, and you can continue to support the podcast by giving us a follow on Instagram at maskingtapes.pod, sharing this podcast and these episodes with your family or friends. And you can also now sponsor and become a friend of the pod on Patreon for just $5 a month at patreon.com/themaskingtapes. I'll see you next time.